My name is Gabriella, and I am 24 years old. What I am about to share with you is the story of how I finally broke free from a family that never truly saw me as their daughter. On my birthday, Mom took the day off from work to prepare an elaborate feast for the family. Every single dish on that table was something Isabella cherished and enjoyed. Not one plate contained anything I particularly cared for, yet I sat there eating in complete silence, saying nothing about my preferences. Several days later, when my aunts Amanda and Christina came to visit our home, Mother transformed into what I can only describe as a broadcasting station, complaining about me to them with remarkable enthusiasm. Gabriella came into our family purely to collect on some cosmic debt, she declared, her voice carrying the weight of profound injustice. On her birthday, I worked myself to the bone preparing that magnificent spread of food, and I could not even coax a pleasant expression from her face. Having exhausted her complaints about me, she immediately pivoted to singing Isabella's praises with equal fervor. Our Isabella, on the other hand, possesses such wonderful manners and understanding. She not only thanked me for my hard work, but spent considerable time complimenting how delicious everything tasted. Honestly, if I had given birth to Isabella first, you could not have paid me to have a second child. When I heard Mother speak those words, a chill swept through my heart, like winter wind through an empty house. She had always shown this blatant favoritism toward my younger sister, just as she had during our childhood years. Back then, Isabella's plate would inevitably hold 2 perfectly fried chicken legs, while mine contained only a single piece, usually the one that had been overcooked to the point of being nearly charred. I keep replaying this in my head, how it could happen to literally anyone, anywhere. Tell me where you're hearing this story from. And if you want more stories like this, hit subscribe. Now back to what happened. I had just returned home from work when I heard Mother holding court with her 2 sisters in the living room, regaling them with fresh complaints about my behavior. In their presence, she showed no restraint whatsoever, unleashing every ounce of dissatisfaction she harbored toward me. "You should have witnessed her attitude," Mother said with theatrical disgust. She pushed around 2 spoonfuls of mashed potatoes and then abandoned her fork entirely, as though the food I had prepared contained some deadly poison. "If it were not for our precious Isabella," she continued, building momentum, "all the effort I invested in cooking that day would have been completely wasted." As she spoke, her voice took on an increasingly martyred tone. She sniffled dramatically and launched into yet another recitation of the hardships she had endured during her pregnancy with me. A story I had heard countless times throughout my life. "Amanda, Christina, you have no idea what I suffered during those 9 months carrying her. Back then, we had not yet purchased our own home, so we were forced to live with her grandparents in that cramped old house in Ohio. Her grandparents were remarkably stingy people who refused to purchase proper nutrition for me during my pregnancy. Her grandmother constantly criticized me, comparing my pregnancy to her own experiences decades earlier. She would lecture me endlessly about how she had worked in the fields right up until labor, claiming I was being unnecessarily dramatic and weak. Throughout my entire pregnancy, I barely consumed anything nutritious. On the day Gabriella was born, the doctors discovered I was severely anemic and physically depleted. Her grandmother insisted I attempt a natural birth, but halfway through the process, I lost consciousness completely. They had to rush me to the operating room for an emergency cesarean section. The entire ordeal nearly cost me my life. I thought once she was born, my suffering would finally end. Instead, she reversed her entire sleep schedule, sleeping peacefully during daylight hours and wailing inconsolably throughout the night. Caring for her nearly drove me to an early grave. I stood frozen in the hallway, my keys cutting painful indentations into my palm. Mother's voice penetrated through the door like ice-cold needles, piercing my heart with each carefully chosen word. She never tired of recounting these tales of woe. During my infancy, when I experienced sleep difficulties, she would carry me around the house for entire nights, muttering under her breath that this child has come to collect on some terrible debt. When I struggled with my SAT examinations, she sat on the floor weeping, declaring, "I nearly died bringing you into this world, and this is how you repay my sacrifice." Even when I received my first paycheck and used it to purchase a beautiful wool coat for her, she managed to resurrect old grievances, saying, "You think this small gesture can erase all the agony I endured giving birth to you?" Inside the living room, Amanda joined the conversation with enthusiasm. "Absolutely right. I remember visiting you after the birth, and you looked as pale as parchment paper. Nothing but skin and bones after the delivery. Gabriella has been nothing but trouble since the very beginning." Christina added her own sigh of agreement. "That is precisely why Isabella is such a treasure. Look how considerate and thoughtful she is, always concerned about your well-being. Unlike Gabriella, who only thinks about herself." Hearing these words, my emotions churned like a turbulent sea. I could not summon the courage to enter the living room and face them. I turned around, planning to leave and return only after both aunts had departed, hoping to avoid another session of their criticism and judgment. However, just as I turned to go, I collided directly with Isabella, who was returning from outside. She carried an elegant cheesecake box in her hands. Seeing me startled her momentarily, but she quickly arranged her features into a sweet, radiant smile. "Sister, you are home! I just purchased your favorite cheesecake," she announced cheerfully. Her smile was identical to the one she wore when acting coquettishly in front of Mother. I remained silent, stepping aside to avoid her. Isabella reached out and firmly grasped my arm, pulling me toward the house without waiting for my consent. "Mother, we have returned home," she called out brightly. Although we had arrived together, Mother's eyes could only focus on Isabella, treating me as though I were completely invisible. "Isabella, darling, welcome home. Your aunts Amanda and Christina and I were just discussing you. Come join our conversation." "Hello, Aunt Amanda and Aunt Christina. I have missed you both terribly during this long separation," Isabella responded immediately, her naturally outgoing personality allowing her to engage effortlessly with our relatives. She then turned toward me, silently encouraging me to offer my own greetings. Unfortunately, my naturally reserved personality had always made interactions with adult relatives feel awkward and forced. Unlike Isabella, I lacked her gift for charming conversation and pleasing words. Moreover, having just overheard Mother and both aunts discussing my numerous shortcomings at the door, I found myself even more unable to speak. Sometimes I engaged in painful self-reflection, wondering if my inability to win Mother's approval stemmed from my lack of Isabella's natural talent for performing in front of others. This deficiency seemed to render all my contributions to our family invisible and unappreciated, no matter how significant my efforts might be. Isabella half dragged and half guided me into the living room, my feet feeling as heavy as lead with each reluctant step. Mother allowed her gaze to linger on Isabella for several seconds before carelessly glancing in my direction as though I were merely an unsightly piece of furniture cluttering her view. "Gabriella, can you not see that your aunts Amanda and Christina are present? Do you not know how to offer a simple greeting? All these years of raising you have been completely wasted." Aunt Amanda quickly attempted to smooth over the tension. "Oh my! Children develop more reserved personalities as they grow older. That is perfectly normal behavior." Despite her diplomatic words, her eyes scrutinized me with unmistakable judgment. Aunt Christina smiled warmly at Isabella while delivering her compliment. "Our Isabella truly understands proper manners and knows how to win people's hearts." Isabella beamed as she placed the cheesecake on the coffee table, then gracefully settled beside Aunt Christina, affectionately linking their arms together. Aunt Christina, please do not embarrass me with such praise. My sister is far more capable than I am. She excels at her career and even manages to save money regularly. While these words appeared to compliment me, they functioned like soft thorns, precisely targeting Mother's sensitive spots. As expected, Mother's expression darkened considerably, and her gaze toward me grew even colder. What good does saving money accomplish when she refuses to contribute anything meaningful to our family? Mother said, glancing pointedly at the cheesecake Isabella had brought. Isabella does not even earn regular income, yet she uses her allowance to purchase treats for everyone to enjoy together. The truth was that Isabella had bought that cheesecake using money I had transferred to her through Venmo that very morning. Having grown accustomed to Mother's constant criticism and fault-finding, I felt too exhausted to offer any explanations. Experience had taught me that my attempts to clarify situations only intensified her disapproval. Isabella could not contain herself and felt compelled to defend me. Mother, please do not speak about sister that way. She sent me the money for this cheesecake this morning. Exactly as I had predicted, Mother's response to this information was not gratitude toward me, but rather continued grumbling. As an older sister who earns regular income, sending her younger sister money to buy cheesecake is hardly remarkable. Other sisters purchase Coach handbags for their mothers, tailored suits for their fathers, and $1,000 MacBook computers for their siblings. I stood motionless, my fingertips growing ice cold. Mother's words functioned like a dull blade, repeatedly cutting through wounds that had barely begun to heal. I remembered purchasing a cashmere scarf for her with last month's paycheck. She had carelessly tossed it into a corner of the sofa and immediately complained to our neighbor that Gabriella always buys such cheap, tasteless items. I recalled last Christmas when I had replaced our family's washing machine with a new model, only to hear her complain that it consumed too much electricity and was inferior to our old machine. Apparently, in her mind, my contributions would always be classified as either expected or insufficient. The atmosphere in the living room grew increasingly uncomfortable due to Mother's fresh complaints. After several moments of awkward silence, Aunt Amanda finally spoke, attempting to lighten the mood with forced cheerfulness. Olivia, you should count your blessings. Having Gabriella send money for Isabella to buy cheesecake demonstrates genuine sisterly affection. In my household, my two children are completely self-centered, showing no consideration for each other whatsoever. Aunt Christina readily agreed. Absolutely true. Young people today are entirely selfish, thinking only of themselves rather than contributing to their families after they start earning money. That certainly does not describe our Isabella, Mother responded quickly, seizing another opportunity to praise her favorite daughter. She refused to keep the cheesecake for herself and instead brought it home for everyone to share together. Isabella truly demonstrates remarkable thoughtfulness and obedience, both aunts concluded, nodding their agreement. Mother, Aunt Amanda, Aunt Christina, please stop praising me so much. You are making me feel embarrassed, Isabella responded with practiced modesty. I simply thought about how Mother also loves cheesecake but feels too guilty to purchase it for herself, so I decided to bring it home for us to enjoy together. Isabella's words caused Mother's eyes to light up with delight. She clasped Isabella's hand and smiled with uncontainable joy. Look at how filial our Isabella is, always thinking of my happiness and well-being. Both aunts joined the chorus of praise. This child truly is like a warm, comforting cotton jacket. Only I knew the real reason Isabella had brought the cheesecake home. Her college dormitory prohibited food storage, forcing her to transport it elsewhere for consumption. This restriction conveniently allowed her to display her filial devotion while simultaneously highlighting my apparent heartlessness. Fearing I might reveal the dormitory's food storage restrictions, Isabella quickly rose to unpack the cheesecake, effectively changing the subject to safer territory. As she opened the box, the rich, sweet aroma of cheese filled the air. She picked up a plastic knife and cut a generous slice, immediately offering it to me first. The sight of that cheesecake triggered an inexplicable ache in my chest. My mind drifted back to a weekend when I was 10 years old. Mother had gone shopping that morning and returned with a slice of cheesecake specifically for Isabella. While I was taking my afternoon nap, she had secretly called Isabella into her bedroom and presented her with the special treat. Through the partially open door, I had watched Isabella sitting contentedly in Mother's lap, holding that slice of cheesecake with cream decorating the corners of her mouth, her eyes nearly disappearing into crescents of pure happiness. Mother had gently wiped the cream from Isabella's face while whispering softly, "Eat slowly, darling. This is especially for you because your sister does not enjoy this particular dessert." Yet Mother knew perfectly well that I stopped at the bakery window every day after school, staring longingly at the display cases for extended periods. "Sister, why are you not eating?" Isabella's voice pulled me back to the present moment. Her fork remained suspended in midair, and her smile contained a trace of careful observation. I stared at that slice of cheesecake, noting how the cream and cheese perfectly resembled the piece from my childhood memory. Some forms of favoritism, I realized, could span entire decades while never bothering to change their excuses. "I do not care for it," I said, stepping backward to avoid her fork. My voice remained as calm as frozen water. "I never have since childhood." Isabella's smile froze in place, and Mother's expression immediately darkened. "What is wrong with you, young lady? Isabella kindly offers to share with you, and you respond with such rudeness?" "I am simply stating the truth," I replied, meeting Mother's gaze directly. The grievance I had buried at age 10 suddenly surged upward like a tide. "Just as you said all those years ago, I do not enjoy this particular food." Mother's eyes flickered with uncertainty, clearly unprepared for me to reference that long-ago incident. Aunt Amanda and Aunt Christina exchanged uncomfortable glances as the air in the living room began to thicken with tension once again. Isabella quickly attempted to defuse the situation. "Sister must be concerned about maintaining her figure. I will share the cheesecake with Mother and our aunts instead." She turned toward Mother with the slice. "Mother, please try some. It is incredibly sweet and delicious." Mother accepted the cheesecake and shot me a withering glare that clearly communicated, "Look how inconsiderate you are being." She took a bite, her voice dripping with obvious favoritism. "Isabella truly understands how to show care and consideration for others, unlike certain people who only think about themselves." I chose not to engage further with their conversation and quietly retreated to my bedroom. Even with the door firmly closed, I could still hear them discussing me in the living room, with Mother's voice rising above the others. I understood she was deliberately speaking loudly enough for me to overhear, hoping to pressure me into being more understanding and making greater contributions to our family. The following days brought increased demands at work due to a major e-commerce promotional campaign. I found myself working late every evening, rarely returning home before midnight. Mother's only acknowledgement of my schedule was a brief reminder to be careful on your way home in the darkness. This stood in stark contrast to her treatment of Isabella, who received multiple phone calls whenever she stayed out past her usual hour. Mother would often drive personally to collect Isabella and then prepare special late-night meals for her upon their return. In my 20-plus years of life, I had never once received a late-night meal prepared by Mother's hands. However, this omission did not particularly concern me. As long as Mother refrained from her constant criticism, I could find contentment in the situation. After 2 consecutive weeks of intensive overtime work, my back ached constantly from the physical strain. The only positive aspect of this period was that my monthly salary had tripled due to the additional hours. When my paycheck arrived, I spent considerable time deliberating before deciding to visit a jewelry store and purchase a necklace for Mother. I viewed this purchase as a way to repay the debt of giving birth she constantly reminded me about. After selecting the necklace, I stopped at a flower shop to buy a bouquet, hoping to create a more ceremonial atmosphere for my gift-giving. Perhaps such thoughtful presentation would help Mother recognize that I was not the cold-hearted and selfish person she frequently described. By the time I arrived home, the hour was quite late. Father, Mother, and Isabella had already gathered around the dining table, preparing to eat their evening meal. Upon seeing me enter, Mother merely lifted her eyelids slightly while using her fork to move vegetables around her plate. "You have returned home? Hurry and wash your hands so you can join us for dinner. The food is growing cold." Isabella demonstrated much more enthusiasm, rising from her seat to help me gather eating utensils. "Sister, you have returned home very late tonight. Were you working overtime again?" Her gaze fell upon the flower bouquet in my hands, and she added with exaggerated surprise, "Sister, have you been secretly dating someone without telling us?" "What? Your sister is dating someone?" Mother's reaction was immediate and intense. She leaped up from the dining table and rushed toward me. Seeing the bouquet in my hands, she snatched it away and threw it directly into the garbage bin. "Gabriella, you have been working for less than 3 years and have made no significant contributions to this family, yet you are already dating. Are you so eager to get married and use this household as a stepping stone to your next destination?" I stood completely bewildered, never imagining that my spontaneous purchase of a flower bouquet could be interpreted as evidence of ulterior motives by Mother. "I am not dating anyone," I said, taking a deep breath to maintain emotional stability. I then bent down to retrieve the flowers from the garbage bin. The bouquet had been thrown with such force that many petals had wilted and bruised, perfectly reflecting my current emotional state. Mother's expression softened slightly, though her brow remained deeply furrowed as she looked at me with confusion. "If you are not dating, where did this bouquet come from?" "I purchased it myself," I replied with complete clarity. The moment I finished speaking, Mother immediately resumed her criticism. "Gabriella, do you have so much money that you enjoy wasting it? What purpose does bringing home these useless flowers serve? Can you eat them as a meal?" I gripped the damaged bouquet tightly, feeling too heartbroken to respond with any words. "Mother, the bouquet Sister bought is absolutely beautiful. After we finish dinner, I will arrange it in a vase and display it prominently in our living room. It will definitely create a stunning focal point," Isabella interjected at precisely the right moment. Mother immediately responded positively to Isabella's suggestion, examining the flowers in my hands with newfound appreciation. Her irritation visibly decreased, and she stopped criticizing me altogether, simply commenting, "Our Isabella truly has excellent taste and judgment." Seeing me standing motionless without reacting, Mother shot me another cold glance and muttered, "Why are you standing there like a statue? Go eat your dinner immediately." I silently walked to the dining table and took my seat. Isabella carefully arranged my purchased bouquet in the most prominent location in our living room. The warm yellow lighting illuminated the flower petals beautifully, creating something that genuinely resembled the stunning focal point she had described. Yet the more attractive those flowers appeared, the more my chest felt constricted by some invisible weight, creating an uncomfortable sensation of suffocation. Father served me a large spoonful of corn while speaking in low, gentle tones. Please eat quickly before everything becomes completely cold. I nodded and mechanically moved mashed potatoes around my plate, finding every bite tasteless and difficult to swallow. Isabella, come eat some barbecued ribs. I prepared these especially for you today. Mother called out, clearly concerned that I might consume all the ribs before Isabella could enjoy them. She specifically emphasized that the ribs had been prepared exclusively for my sister. Mother, thank you so much. You worked so hard today. When you grow old, I will prepare ribs for you to enjoy, Isabella responded, returning to the dining table while offering her typical charming flattery. Mother treasured these sweet words above all else. Her previously stern expression immediately transformed into a radiant smile, her eyes narrowing into delighted crescents. She used her fork to place a large piece of rib onto Isabella's plate, completely absorbed in doting on her favorite daughter. Sauce from the fork dripped onto the tablecloth, but Mother remained oblivious, her attention entirely focused on her charming younger daughter. I continued mechanically eating my mashed potatoes, which seemed to stick uncomfortably in my throat. The barbecued ribs on the table glistened with appealing oil, reminding me of my childhood favorite dish. During those early years, I eagerly anticipated Thanksgiving because it was the only occasion when we enjoyed such special food. However, Mother consistently gave Isabella the meatiest portions while reserving the bony scraps for me. Back then, I believed my treatment resulted from insufficient good behavior, thinking Mother would love me more if I tried harder to be well-behaved. Only later did I understand that some forms of favoritism are innate and completely unrelated to a child's conduct or character. After dinner, Father left to attend to some business. Mother settled on the sofa with Isabella to watch television dramas together. I remained alone at the dining table. Gabriella, since you are the last person finished eating, please clean up the dishes and utensils. Mother's voice drifted from the living room area. I did not respond verbally, but quietly began collecting plates and silverware. The sound of ceramic pieces touching each other echoed clearly in the empty dining room, like hammers striking against my already numb heart. Childhood memories were identical. I always washed dishes after family meals. Isabella would either claim sister cleans them so much better than I could, or cling to Mother's side acting cute, prompting Mother to smile and say, "Let your big sister handle it since you are still too young." Even now, with Isabella attending college, Mother continued using the "still too young" excuse, as though it remained perfectly reasonable. After finishing the kitchen cleanup, I found myself with nothing else to occupy my time. My mind wrestled with whether I should present the necklace to Mother. Finally, I convinced myself that since I had already made the purchase, I should follow through with giving it to her. I retrieved the long jewelry box from my pocket and walked toward the living room. Mother had mentioned repeatedly in recent weeks that she desired a gold necklace, but felt reluctant to spend money on such an accessory for herself. She had even made indirect complaints about having a working daughter who never thought to buy jewelry for her mother. Isabella was nestled comfortably in Mother's embrace, peeling an orange and feeding individual segments to her. The sound of laughter from the television mixed with their quiet conversation, creating a warm, intimate atmosphere that seemed to exclude me entirely, like an impenetrable net designed to keep me on the outside. "Mother," I said, standing beside the sofa with the jewelry box clutched in my hands, my fingertips growing numb from gripping the sharp corners. Mother shifted her attention away from the television screen and glanced at me with mild annoyance. "What is it now?" "I bought something for you." I extended the box toward her, my fingers trembling slightly with nervous anticipation. When Mother noticed the jewelry store box in my hands, A flash of excitement crossed her eyes. However, this expression quickly transformed into something that combined critical examination with suspicious scrutiny. She opened the box, and the brilliant golden gleam immediately caught her attention. Isabella leaned closer to look and exclaimed, "Wow, it is a gold necklace! Sister, you actually bought Mother a necklace. How wonderful!" Mother remained silent, carefully lifting the necklace from its box and holding it in her palm, weighing it repeatedly with obvious calculation. "Mother, let me help you put on the necklace. I am certain it will look absolutely beautiful on you," Isabella offered, reaching to take the jewelry. Mother's brow furrowed as she regarded me with an expression approaching disgust. "Gabriella, how much money did you spend on this necklace? Why does it feel so lightweight?" "Mrs. Johnson downstairs has a necklace her daughter bought for her, and it appears much larger and more substantial than what you have purchased." I considered explaining that this particular necklace featured solid construction that, despite appearing smaller, actually weighed as much as Mrs. Johnson's more ostentatious piece. However, I ultimately could not bring myself to speak these words. When I had bought her a cashmere coat, she complained about the color being too mature for her taste. When I replaced our household washing machine, she criticized its energy consumption compared to our old model. Even when I asked a colleague to bring back premium essential oils from Europe, she immediately gave them to Isabella, claiming, "Your sister studies so hard and needs these to relieve her stress." What purpose would explanations serve? In Mother's mind, nothing I did could ever be correct, while Isabella could do no wrong whatsoever. "Mother, if you do not like it, please return it to me. I will," I began, intending to say I would keep it for myself if she found it unsuitable. Before I could complete my sentence, Mother placed the necklace around Isabella's neck right in front of me. Despite hearing me speak, she did not pause in her actions, fastening my gift around my sister's throat while speaking in completely matter-of-fact tones. "This necklace has too small a pendant for someone my age to wear appropriately. Isabella, you are young with a slender neck, making it perfect for you. Consider it my gift to ensure your academic success and bright future." Wow! This necklace suits Isabella so perfectly. She looks absolutely elegant and expensive wearing it. Mother continued her enthusiastic commentary. Finally, her gaze returned to my face, showing no trace of guilt or shame. Instead, her eyes held a confident expression suggesting, "Look how fairly I handle these situations," as though the necklace purchased with half my monthly overtime pay had always belonged to Isabella by right. "Gabriella, you can see I am not rejecting your necklace. The pendant is simply too delicate for a middle-aged woman like myself to wear attractively. Rather than letting it sit unused, Isabella can wear it beautifully. Look how elegant and sophisticated it makes her appear." She patted Isabella's shoulder while using her eyes to signal that gratitude was expected. Isabella understood immediately and looked toward me with carefully practiced embarrassment. "Sister, I will wear it temporarily for you. When I start earning money in the future, I will definitely buy you a much larger, more impressive necklace, even grander than Mrs. Johnson's." She touched the necklace at her throat, smiling with sickening sweetness while her eyes held barely concealed satisfaction. I stared at the pendant swaying against her neck, its golden gleam painful to my eyes. I had visited 3 different jewelry stores and compared dozens of styles before selecting this particular design, thinking its delicate appearance would suit Mother's slender neck perfectly. Yet in her mouth, it became too small and inappropriate, instantly transformed into Isabella's protective charm. "That will not be necessary," I said, clenching my fists until my nails dug deeply into my palms. "I purchased this for Mother. Since she dislikes it, she should return it to me. Why are you being so stubborn about this? Mother immediately became defensive, positioning Isabella protectively behind her. It is merely a necklace. Why are you competing with your younger sister? As the older sister, you should naturally accommodate her wishes. Accommodate? I laughed, the sound carrying indescribable sadness. Have I not accommodated enough throughout my entire life? When she broke grandfather's antique vase, I took the punishment for her. When she took away my scholarship opportunity, I pretended not to care. When she appropriated the laptop computer I had saved 6 months to purchase for gaming, I gritted my teeth and said it did not matter. Now you want me to give up the necklace I bought with my own hard-earned money. Why should I accommodate her? I laughed while recounting these memories, then forcibly removed the necklace from Isabella's neck. 20+ years of accumulated heartache, grievance, and suppressed endurance, combined with contributions that were never acknowledged and gestures that were always belittled, finally found their only available outlet for expression. Gabriella, how dare you speak to me in this manner? I see your wings have grown strong enough that you think you can defy me. Mother's voice shook with rage as she pointed her finger at my face and began screaming abusively. Let me tell you something, Gabriella. You do not have the right to act wild in this household. I bought that necklace for you, so I have the freedom to give it to whomever I choose. How dare you snatch something away from your sister? Gabriella, you ungrateful, worthless creature. Why should I give her something I purchased with my own money? I met Mother's gaze with unwavering determination, having reached a point of complete desperation. Throughout my entire life, you have shown blatant favoritism toward Isabella. No matter how well I perform, you refuse to see my efforts. Meanwhile, Isabella can win your complete devotion simply by speaking a few pleasant words. Mother's face turned ashen with fury. She raised her hand to strike me, but I stood my ground without flinching. Gabriella, at your age, you should be ashamed of yourself for competing with your younger sister for attention. After all these years of sacrifice to raise you to adulthood, this is how you speak to me? If I had known you would become such an ungrateful wretch, I should have abandoned you at birth. Mother's words functioned like a poisoned dagger, piercing through my final line of defense with surgical precision. Tears could no longer be contained and began streaming down my cheeks. Yes, you should have abandoned me at birth. I wiped away my tears, my voice becoming eerily calm. That way, you would never have considered me a debt collector, and you would not have suffered so much bringing me into this world. You could have devoted all your love to Isabella alone. How perfect that would have been. I turned and walked away without looking back. Behind me, I could hear Mother's hysterical screaming and Isabella's false attempts at peacemaking, but I refused to turn around. In the past, I had constantly convinced myself to maintain family harmony by repeatedly thinking, Gabriella, be generous. Do not keep score of these small matters. Just focus on loving yourself properly. However, I had finally reached the point of complete emotional death and could no longer summon any generosity whatsoever. I returned to my room and began packing my belongings, preparing to move into my company's employee housing. Isabella's bedroom was our family's second largest room, complete with a private bathroom and bathing area. My room, in contrast, was merely a converted small study, pitifully cramped without even space for a proper wardrobe. At most, it could accommodate only a single clothes-hanging rack. I gathered all my clothing from the rack and stuffed everything into my suitcase. Since I owned very few possessions, the packing process concluded quickly. As I left my room, I observed Mother speaking into her phone, complaining to her sisters through voice messages. That dead girl Gabriella has completely lost her mind. She actually argued with me over a worthless necklace. What sin did I commit to give birth to such a heartless, ungrateful creature? I ignored Mother entirely, pulling my suitcase past her toward the front door. Mother caught sight of me in her peripheral vision and continued raising her voice in angry denunciation. Fine. Since your wings have grown strong and you want to leave home just because I criticized you slightly, once you walk out that door, never come back again. My determination remained absolutely unshakable. I quickened my pace rather than slowing down and walked through our front entrance. The moment I closed the door behind me, the hallway's motion sensor light illuminated automatically. Its harsh, white glow fell across my suitcase wheels, casting my slightly trembling shadow against the floor. The sound of continued cursing filtered through the door like muffled drums, causing my temples to throb painfully. I did not look back or even pause, my fingers whitening from gripping the suitcase handle as I descended the stairs step by step. The building's security door opened with a creaking sound, and the evening breeze carried autumn's chill through my collar. I shivered involuntarily, yet felt that the stagnant air I had been breathing for 20+ years was finally beginning to loosen its grip on my chest. The streetlights in our residential complex glowed with dim yellow light, stretching tree shadows into long, twisted shapes resembling countless prying eyes. I pulled my suitcase quickly past the flower beds, my shoes crushing dried fallen leaves that produced soft, crackling sounds beneath my feet. My phone vibrated in my pocket with an incoming call from Father. I stared at the screen as it brightened and dimmed repeatedly, ultimately choosing not to answer. Some conversations remain impossible to clarify, even when conducted face to face. Attempting them through electronic transmission would only make them more hollow and meaningless. He would probably urge me to return home, claim that Mother was only temporarily angry, and insist that sisters never maintain overnight grudges. However, I had been hearing these exact words for 20+ years and had grown completely weary of them. Only I understood that Mother's favoritism was not a matter of days or weeks, but had existed from the very moment Isabella was born into our family. I remembered a winter during my middle school years when I lay in bed with a high fever, my throat so painful I could not swallow water. When Mother returned from work that day, she noticed Isabella sitting on the sofa eating strawberries, special fruit she had made a detour to purchase because Isabella had improved her test scores. "Mother, sister seems to have a fever. Her face looks very red," Isabella had mumbled through a mouthful of strawberries. Mother glanced toward my bedroom door with obvious irritation and waved her hand dismissively. What is wrong with children having slight fevers? They are not that fragile. Isabella, eat quickly before the strawberries become too warm to taste good. That night, my fever reached nearly 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Father discovered my condition when he returned from his late shift and carried me to the emergency room on his back. Mother never once entered my bedroom throughout the entire ordeal. The following morning, she complained that Father had overreacted unnecessarily, delaying her preparation of Isabella's breakfast. She even sternly instructed me to maintain distance from Isabella, claiming I would infect her and cause my precious sister to suffer. Yet when I was suffering from illness, Mother could not be bothered to spare me a single glance. Even our clothing reflected this disparity. Isabella always wore current season fashions, while I received either her outgrown garments or discounted clearance items that nobody else wanted. Despite being the older sister, I constantly wore Isabella's hand-me-downs and cast-offs. During one school sports day that required white athletic shoes, my yellowed, repeatedly washed sneakers were completely unwearable. I gathered courage to ask Mother for $100 to purchase a new pair. She was busy selecting dresses for Isabella at the time and responded without lifting her head. "Your shoes are still functional. Why waste money unnecessarily? This dress for Isabella costs over $300, and she needs it for her dance competition. We cannot compromise on her needs. I ultimately worked weekend shifts at a restaurant to earn enough money for discounted, discontinued shoes that caused painful blisters on my heels. When Mother noticed my injuries, she only commented, "You deserve it for disobeying me and insisting on buying new shoes." During holidays and family visits, she consistently brought Isabella along while rarely including me. When Father questioned why I was not invited, Mother invariably claimed my personality was too withdrawn and I would embarrass her in front of relatives. Isabella, she insisted, was different, charming, articulate, and capable of making her look good in social situations. These incidents accumulated in my heart like grains of sand, gradually forming an enormous mountain. Previously, I had convinced myself that blood relationships could not be severed and that patience would eventually resolve our problems. Only now did I finally understand completely that some forms of favoritism are carved into people's bones. Just as Mother always remembered Isabella's dislike of onions, while forgetting my severe allergy to mangoes, always knew Isabella's preference for pink, while remaining unaware that I had despised lace trim since early childhood. I moved into my company's employee housing and shared living space with another young woman of similar age. Our situations were remarkably comparable. She had a brother 2 years younger, and her mother also showed obvious favoritism toward her male sibling. We often cooked instant noodles together after working overtime, sharing family grievances under our apartment's dim desk lamp. Our daily routine felt simple, yet comfortable and peaceful. Most importantly, my mental state improved dramatically since I no longer had to endure Mother's endless criticism and differential treatment. 3 months passed quickly. Mother never contacted me once during this entire period. I understood her personality well. Someone so prideful and domineering would never humble herself to apologize or make the first move toward reconciliation. Since she refused to reach out, I maintained equal silence. Father and Isabella called several times, but I declined to answer their attempts at communication. Once I accepted their calls, they would inevitably spend considerable time trying to convince me to return home and make peace with Mother. I felt exhausted by the prospect and had absolutely no desire to resume that living situation. When they could not reach me by phone, Isabella began sending text messages instead. "Sister, please come home. You have been away for so long, and I miss you terribly." Actually, Mother misses you too, but her pride prevents her from admitting it openly. I glanced at her messages briefly before deleting them all with a single keystroke. I responded with one word: busy. Indeed, I had been genuinely busy during this period. I volunteered for overtime work every single day to increase my take-home income. The previous weekend, I had taken my roommate to browse real estate listings and found a single-bedroom apartment that caught my interest. With $20,000 in savings and plans to earn additional money, I calculated I could gather enough for a down payment and establish permanent roots in this city. This idea took root in my mind like a seed, growing stronger each day and giving purpose to my overtime hours. After another week passed, near the end of August as the school year approached, Mother suddenly called me. I stared at the familiar yet distant phone number displayed on my screen, hesitating for a long time before finally pressing the answer button. "Hello, is this Gabriella?" Mother's voice came through the phone connection, sounding unlike her usual stern tone. Instead, it carried an unmistakable quality of ingratiation. I felt somewhat startled by this unexpected change and responded quietly, "Yes." "Well, are you busy right now? Mother has something very important to discuss with you," she continued, her pleading tone becoming even more pronounced, as though she needed something significant from me. My heart sank with an ominous premonition. Please go ahead. The situation is this. Mother paused, apparently choosing her words carefully. Isabella's acceptance letter arrived from that private university she applied to. I tightened my grip on the phone without responding. As you know, private universities are extremely expensive. Annual tuition combined with living expenses exceeds $50,000. Our family savings are insufficient for this expense. Her voice grew progressively quieter, deliberately creating an atmosphere of difficulty and desperation. Your father and I discussed this situation extensively, and we truly have no alternative options. Here it comes, I thought with cold amusement. After all this elaborate setup, the conversation was ultimately about money. You have some savings available, correct? Mother finally reached her main point, her tone suddenly becoming urgent. The $20,000 you have accumulated during your working years, could you lend it to our family temporarily so Isabella can pursue her education? After she graduates and begins earning substantial income, she will certainly repay you immediately and show additional gratitude for your sisterly support. I gazed out my apartment window at the oak tree, its leaves rustling in the wind. Apparently, she had already investigated my exact savings amount, and Isabella's recent missing you messages had merely been preparation for this moment. I will not lend the money, I heard my voice trembling, yet remaining completely resolute. Silence lasted several seconds on the other end before familiar shrill anger erupted. Gabriella, what did you just say? Repeat that. I said I will not lend the money. I took a deep breath. That money represents my down payment for purchasing an apartment. Purchase an apartment? Why does a young woman need to buy an apartment? Mother's voice resembled a cat whose tail had been stepped on. Isabella's university education affects her entire future. Cannot you delay your apartment purchase by 2 years? Why is her future important while my life means nothing? I asked in return, my voice carrying a calmness that surprised even me. Throughout our entire lives, how much attention and money have you invested in her? When I wanted athletic shoes, you told me to find work. When I had a high fever, you worried about her catching my illness. When I bought you a necklace with my hard-earned money, you immediately gave it to her. Now you want me to sacrifice the money I need for housing so she can attend private university? How can you speak this way? Mother's voice reached a higher pitch. She is your biological sister. Is helping her not your natural obligation? Did I raise you to adulthood only to produce such a cold-blooded, heartless creature? Natural obligation? I laughed while tears began falling against my will. What exactly is natural? Should I always be sacrificed for her benefit? Always clear the path for her success? Mother, have you ever considered me your daughter, even for a single second? You are completely unreasonable. Mother could barely form coherent words. I heard a loud crash through the phone, as though she had violently thrown the device against a table. I held the silent receiver for a long time, standing motionless. Outside my window, wind carried fallen leaves past the glass, resembling all those moments when favoritism had crushed my childhood dreams. When my roommate returned home, she noticed my red-rimmed eyes and offered me a cup of warm milk. Another argument with your family? I nodded and told her about the conversation I had just concluded. Do not let it upset you, she sighed. Families that favor one child over another will always consider your sacrifices completely natural, no matter how much of your heart you give them. I sipped the milk, feeling its warmth flow down my throat while failing to heat the chill in my chest. That night, I experienced insomnia, tossing restlessly while wondering if I was being too unforgiving. After all, we were blood relatives connected by family bonds. However, when I recalled years of accumulated injustices, remembered Mother's matter-of-fact expression as she placed my necklace around Isabella's neck, and thought about her self-righteous tone during today's phone call, my momentary doubt evaporated completely. The next morning, I checked my bank balance and felt reassured by those familiar digits on my account statement. These savings represented my gradually accumulated confidence and security, which no one had the right to take from me. A few days later, Father suddenly appeared at my apartment building. He carried a bag of fruit and stood downstairs, his hair noticeably grayer and his back more curved than I remembered. When he saw me, he smiled awkwardly. "Gabriella, Father came to visit you." I led him to a small park near my apartment building where we found a bench to sit together. "Your mother spoke too harshly the other day. Please do not take her words to heart," Father said, rubbing his hands together while speaking quietly. "She was desperate about the situation. Isabella has been looking forward to attending this university for such a long time." "Father," I interrupted him, "did you also come here about money?" Father's expression froze momentarily before he sighed deeply. "Gabriella, Father knows we have treated you unfairly. Your mother has indeed favored Isabella throughout these years. However, this opportunity is genuinely important for Isabella's future. After she succeeds, how could she possibly forget her older sister's support? I have seen plenty of people who become ungrateful after achieving success. Father, from today forward, I have no mother and no family." I hung up and blocked all my family members' phone numbers. Then I walked to the window, looking down at the traffic flowing through the streets below, suddenly feeling an overwhelming sense of liberation. Apparently, complete emotional death feels exactly like this. I requested time off from work to visit the bank and print transaction records, then went to the police station to file a report. Although I knew the chances of recovering my stolen money were minimal, I needed to take some action to properly conclude this chapter of trampled family relationships. My roommate accompanied me through these errands, offering constant comfort and support. "Do not worry, money can be earned again as long as you are healthy and whole." I nodded in agreement while understanding clearly that some things, once lost, can never be recovered. From that day forward, I worked with even greater determination. During office hours, I focused on my regular job, and evenings I took on additional freelance work. When exhaustion reached its peak, I would hide under my blankets and cry. After releasing my emotions, I would wake the next morning and continue pushing forward with determination. 6 months later, I finally saved enough money for a down payment and purchased the single-bedroom apartment I had been dreaming about. On the day I received the keys, I sat alone in the empty room for an extended period. Sunlight streamed through the windows onto the floor, creating warm, inviting patches of light. I knew the road ahead would be long and challenging. However, I felt no fear whatsoever. Because from this day forward, I could finally live for myself. As for that so-called family and those 20,000 stolen dollars, I would consider them the final tuition payment for this twisted relationship. From now on, may we each find our separate paths across vast distances, living peacefully in our own worlds, never to meet again. That's our story for today. We hope you enjoyed this incredible tale. Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Subscribe for more captivating stories like this, and don't forget to like and share this video. Thank you for being here with us. See you next time.